Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to our sponsors and supporters around the world. On behalf of our event co-chairs, Michelle Flournoy, Steve Joyce, and Charles Rifkin, we'd like to welcome you to CARE's 2020 Virtual VIP Pre-Summit and the CARE Global Leaders Network Awards. I'm Beth Solomon, CARE's Managing Director of Strategic Initiatives and Development in Washington, D.C. We'd like to thank CARE's supporters, partners, and stakeholders in this special gathering as we recognize 75 years of dedication to serving the most vulnerable among us in 100 countries around the world. Thank you so much for your support. The CARE Global Leaders Network is an active community of business, national security, and diplomatic leaders who believe that humanitarian and development aid are critical to U.S. national security and global stability. We're extremely grateful to welcome three of the most respected leaders in our government today: our honoree and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senators Richard Shelby and Patrick Leahy, Chairman and Ranking Member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and our honoree, His Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Mashal Al-Thani of the State of Qatar. As we've seen the COVID pandemic rip through communities around the world with great economic pain, exposing social and racial inequality, the need for a global approach to our challenges has never been more clear. But before we start the program, it's my pleasure to announce that former Congressman Jim Moran has joined the CARE Global Leaders Network Advisory Board. During his 24 years in Congress and long before, Congressman Moran has been a champion of economic and social justice and advancing women's rights around the world. We're very proud to welcome him to the CARE family, and we thank him for his continuing service. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Michelle Nunn, CARE's President and CEO. Michelle?
Thanks so much, Beth. And thanks to the amazing supporters and partners who are standing with us at this critical moment, everyone who's on this call and this amazing assemblage of speakers and honorees. This is an extraordinarily challenging time for all of us, and both at home and abroad. Injustice and inequality are scourges that we have to acknowledge and address in every community. We know that racism and inequality are not new. They're a part of the cause of poverty. And as COVID-19 tears through our country and the most at-risk communities in the world, we must rise to this challenge with even more determination and the commitment to stand for justice. And I know that you all stand with us in that. So I want to turn it over to my partner, Jada McKenna, who's the CARE's Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Our nation rose to an enormous challenge 75 years ago, sending millions of care packages filled with food and supplies to starving families in Europe after World War II, all funded by a proud generation of caring American citizens. These iconic brown cardboard boxes were a lifeline that built the reputation of America as a compassionate and a generous country. Since then, CARE's impact has grown exponentially, delivering dramatic change in the lives of women and children worldwide. Last year, CARE reached nearly 70 million people in 100 countries with humanitarian relief and poverty-fighting programs. CARE is proud to have contributed to cutting poverty rates in half over the past 24 years. Our focus on marginalized women and girls and our pioneering micro-savings programs reaching more than 8.4 million women have fundamentally changed the way aid is delivered. And we are so proud to be able to expand this opportunity and this moment of solidarity to all Americans, to remind ourselves of what we're capable of, who we can be, and what we can offer the world. With the modern care package, we've made it possible to support frontline healthcare workers and families in need here and at home in the United States, and at-risk families abroad with aid that is swift, efficient, and life-saving. COVID-19 has taught us that no community is safe unless every community is safe. CARE is well placed to rise to the challenge again, with 95% of our staff being from the communities where they work. We also have experience fighting the spread of epidemics like Ebola, cholera, and Zika. We've mounted COVID crisis response, including basic water and sanitation and gender-based violence prevention in 64 countries and counting. CARE is taking the experience and impact of the past 75 years and applying it to the challenges of today and tomorrow. Michelle?
So the key to this moment, the key to how we meet this moment is leadership. And today we have some of the most extraordinary leaders that our nation has to offer. And we want to hear from them about what we need to do together as a country to address our challenges around the world and to build a future for our children and for generations to come, because this is a true inflection point. So before I introduce our guests, I want us to watch a short video about CARE's history and what we can do together.
This is a symbol of human kindness, the care package.
You've got to work together.
The trademark of people caring for people.
CARE is able to accomplish all this only through...
These are the American food and clothing packages now saving lives in Korea.
Support CARE.
Make a contribution to CARE.
We Americans met that crisis with an unprecedented outpouring of generosity.
Working with CARE is a great privilege for us. CARE do amazing
I'm here to try to get you as excited about CARE as I am. Now come on, y'all.
We're on our way to our first meeting with Representative Madeline Dean.
People don't want our pity. People want our respect.
I care.
I care.
I care.
I care.
I care.
And I care.
So it's my honor to introduce to you all another extraordinary leader. You've seen some of our historical leaders in that video, and today we have Michelle Flournoy, who is the Vice Chair for CARE and former Undersecretary of Defense, to present our very first award. Michelle.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and I'm truly delighted to be here to present the CARE Global Leader Award to His Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Mashal Al Thani of the state of Qatar. Qatar, as you know, has been a true leader in humanitarian relief and education and women's empowerment efforts throughout the world. Largely through the direction of Her Highness, Sheikh Mosa bin Nasser, Qatar has aided millions of the most vulnerable people on our planet through working with both CARE and through many efforts with the United Nations. In the coming decade, Qatar has committed to spend $10 billion on humanitarian and development assistance. Sheikh Mosa has directed that these funds emphasize the education and the empowerment support for young women, in particular, in developing countries, so to enable both wings of humankind to take flight and fulfill their full potential. So we wanted to recognize Qatar and the ambassador in particular for their extraordinary generosity to CARE, but also to the world, and even more for their leadership in empowering those most in need through education, humanitarian assistance, and economic development. So, Mr. Ambassador, so wonderful to have you with us here today. Thank you to you and for Qatar's many contributions towards making the world a better, more peaceful and just place for all people. Mr. Ambassador, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Michelle Flournoy, ladies and gentlemen, first let me express my heartfelt gratitude to Madam Michelle Flournoy for the introduction. I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe in these difficult times. I am humbled to receive this award and to address an audience of philanthropists whose noble actions are having a lasting impact on the lives of millions of people. I avail myself of this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, on her award. I would like also to congratulate former Congressman Jim Moran on joining CARE Global Leaders Network Advisory Board, and I wish him success in his new mission. Ladies and gentlemen, I am inspired by the work that CARE has undertaken over the past 70 years to improve the living conditions of unprivileged groups and to provide emergency relief to disaster-stricken communities across the world. Qatar prides itself on being one of CARE's partners in the MENA region and beyond. we laud the real impact that CARE's action have on the daily lives of millions of people, as well as in equipping them with the tools and skills necessary to help them achieve self-reliance. My country looks forward to further developing its partnership with CARE to empower unprivileged communities and improve their living conditions. Let me assure you of our desire to work hand in hand with your organization to help vulnerable communities across the world weather the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your extraordinary and critical leadership and humanitarian support around the world. We're so grateful. It's my pleasure to introduce to you now the co-chair of CARE's board, Glenn Hutchins. Glenn is going to present our award to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And Glenn has an illustrious career and bio, but just to highlight, his father spent his career working on foreign assistance programs at the Department of Agriculture and was one of the founders of CARE, one of the creators. In addition to co-chairing our board, he also co-chairs the board of Brookings. Glenn?
Thank you, Michelle. It's a real pleasure for me to introduce today House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who I am flatter myself and am lucky to call my friend. Nancy, as we all know, made history in 2007 when she became the first woman elected to serve our country in this role, and again in 2018. Nancy has led us through two modern national crises, both this one and in 2009, and it certainly is reassuring to have her at the helm. With respect to CARE, Speaker Pelosi has been a stalwart champion of humanitarian and development aid and women's empowerment through her 17 terms in Congress. Not always easy to do in times of domestic crisis like today. She has also helped a record number of women get elected to national office, notably in 2018, and is dedicated to advancing women's and girls to lift their communities out of poverty toward equality and justice for all, which, as we know, is at the center of CARE's mission. Madam Speaker, thank you. We are very proud to honor you today with the first ever CARE Women's Empowerment Award. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Glenn. It's an honor to receive this award from CARE, but to receive it from you is a special honor, and to receive it at the same time as Mr. Ambassador is receiving his award makes it a very special honor as well. Thank you for your kind words, Mr. Ambassador. My best regards to your mother, your father, your sister, your family, and congratulations to you. We feel very blessed, both of us, to get this recognition from CARE. And Glenn Hutchins, with your actions for Africa, just Michelle touched on some of the contributions that you have made. It's wonderful to be in your company and that of Michelle Nunn, just so Michelle Flournoy. I remember, Michelle, when you first came in at a presentation, you were expecting a baby. How 20 years old by now, maybe? How time goes by. I'm so proud of you. And Jim Moran, my former colleague, congratulations to you and to CARE for your role there. Glenn, thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, and your kind words. It's an honor to be with you to celebrate 75 years of transformational leadership that CARE has provided to the world. And I'm very honored to receive CARE's first Women's Empowerment Award. People would ask me, if you ruled the world, what would you do? If I ruled the world, I would pass something right away that said, educate women and girls. So that would make the biggest difference in our globe. And so that's why this award is important to me. This past year, I was proud to travel, Susan, to Normandy and to the Battle of the Bulge and other battlefields to commemorate the 75th anniversary of pivotal events in World War II. Part of that legacy of US leadership in World War II is CARE, is the CARE package, which helped feed a hungry, war-torn continent. Today, CARE's network, and under leadership of Michelle Nunn and the work of Jada and Ruth, all of the people, your advocates and entrepreneurs, is helping protect the rights of women and girls, secure access to economic opportunity, expand access to education and disease prevention, and rebuild after wars and natural disasters. You know that, but I want you to know how recognized it is all over. Over decades of travel, I've seen firsthand the hope that CARE's planners bring by improving opportunities for women, men, and children around the world. I was on a CODEL last year with the Congressional Black Caucus to mark the 400 years since the first slaves were taken from Africa. I was able there to meet some of CARE's network of brilliant women. Congratulations. With CARE's community-based support, these women's ingenuity, creativity, and passion were transforming lives and ending the cycle of poverty and violence. Today, you are responding to the COVID-19 challenge in 64 countries at once, a truly unprecedented scope in your 75-year history. As the virus shows no respect for borders, we must work together to ensure a global response equal to the humanitarian and economic relief needed during this crisis. I reiterate to you my commitment to robust funding to work with Mr. Chairman Shelby, Mr. Vice Chair Leahy, as we have worked together in a very bipartisan way for these global issues, for vital global health initiatives necessary, in this case, to defeat the coronavirus and improve response capacity worldwide. I know Lena Lowy will be right there at that table as well. As the world faces this staggering threat from the virus, as well as age-old scourge of social injustice, this work is as vital as ever. By defending women's social, economic, and political strength, we can confront these ongoing threats and empower vulnerable and marginalized communities, now even as we face the climate threat and the rest. What an honor to be with each and every one of you, and to be with members of our first families who have contributed so much to our country. It's a true honor to be with you. Together, let us lay a foundation for a strong, vibrant, and resilient future. Again, thank you so much for this great honor. And again, thank you for bringing lasting change in our country and to the world. Thank you for caring.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, for your extraordinary leadership at this very critical time. And I know that we can count on you to work with the senators to ensure that America meets this moment just as we did in the aftermath of World War II, and that we continue to show that we are a true humanitarian leader, leading with our values, but also with the knowledge we're truly interdependent. And that our security, economic and national, is dependent upon our investments in the world. So thank you. And I cannot think of a better, more powerful woman to honor with our first Women's Empowerment Award. I know our team from Ghana is on the phone and cheering you on as well, and was so inspired by your visit. So thank you for all that you do.
Inspired by them. Thank you, Michelle, so much. Thank you.
So it's my now honor to introduce Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama and Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont. Senator Shelby is the chairman of the extraordinarily powerful Senate Appropriations Committee, and we are so very grateful for your staunch support of U.S. leadership in humanitarian and development efforts, especially at this critical moment in this extraordinary time. So, Senator.
Thank you, Michelle. First, congratulations to CARE, 75 years. Great achievements. I remember as a 11-year-old boy in Birmingham, Alabama, helping my mother to collect food, clothing, and money for CARE because of the devastation that had gone on in Europe during the war. That was my first adventure and knowledge of CARE. They have made extraordinary contributions to the humanitarian cause all over the world, and we're growing. And I want to congratulate first Speaker Pelosi for her award. She's been in the forefront of all this. She's a great humanitarian, and I'm willing and able to work with her on a lot of issues like this. And also my colleague, Senator Leahy from Vermont, that serves with me as Vice Chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Humanitarian aid for people in need all over the world is what we're all about. And this CARE stands for what it means. Thank you for letting me participate today.
Well, Senator Shelby, it doesn't surprise me that you were influenced by, it sounds like, civic-minded parents, and that you were assembling care packages way back in the day. So we thank you for many decades of leadership, and particularly for your willingness to reach across the aisle to do what's right for America and for the world at this moment.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's my honor now to introduce to you Senator Patrick Leahy. Senator Leahy's official biography actually says he's one of the Senate's most ardent proponents of humanitarian and development aid to the world's poorest countries. And we know that to be true and couldn't agree more. And we're so delighted that you could join us, Senator Leahy.
Okay, is it coming through now?
It is. Now we can hear you. And
okay,
we can
thank you.
Well. Thank
and,
you.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank my good friend Dick Shelby for what he had to say. You know, the two of us work very, very closely together on these issues. They're not and never should be partisan issues. And of course, to see Speaker Pelosi being honored and Ambassador Tani, you know, Michelle, you've done what you and CARES have done. You recognize two people who really deserve that kind of recognition, because what they do is they show your mission that fights poverty all over the world. It saves lives, but also brings about social justice. We've had a very difficult week in our country after the horrific murder of George Floyd. And we've had to confront rooted systemic weaknesses in our society that sometimes come about from intractable poverty or racism, injustice. But this is something that CARE has worked at all over the world. And so the summit, the only regret I have in the summit that we're having to do it this way, I was looking forward so much, so many of you are such longtime friends just to be together. But if what we're doing is telling people we stand together for the right things, the protests here and around the world are called for justice. But that's what CARES does every single day around the world, every single hour, working for a world in which hope and tolerance, social justice, dignity, security is there for everybody, no matter what your nationality, your gender, your race, your ethnicity. Those pictures you were showing before, showing the people coming together. You know, racial and ethnic discrimination, not unique in our country any more than systemic discrimination against women and girls around the world. But CARE steps in, and bit by bit, throughout my lifetime, you have made more and more changes. I don't know if the world really can fully understand the tremendous changes that you've made. They show up in our laws, our policies, our religious belief, you're working to get rid of social and economic barriers. And in the Appropriations Committee, I've been either ranking member or chairman back and forth, and I think Senator Shelby will tell you also with his help, we've worked to achieve the same goals as CARE. We've focused on the world's most vulnerable populations. And interestingly enough, it is in sometimes a polarized Senate, this is a bill that usually passes virtually unanimously, Republicans and Democrats together. But we have to keep on doing this. As long as you have people who are not treated as having equal worth to everybody. We see it in our country, but we see it around the world. We are born and should be born equally, but then we should be treated equally. So we can revert to status quo, or we can make, in our country, a better country because of what happened. But we should also unite behind a common mission. I think that's CARE's mission. Finish the work that so many who came before us gave their lives for. And I've been very heartened by so many have spoken out. I'm going to be followed by a dear friend, Admiral Mike Mullen. He is a man who I've known him for years and years. We talk often. He has always put his country, he's put the Constitution above everything else. That's why he was so revered and is by all the military services, and I'm delighted you have him here. But Michelle, just on a personal note, as I've told you privately, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of CARES. Thank you.
Senator, thank you so much. I wish that we could amplify this message across the country from all of you, because I think you've spoken to what unites us, the belief that every life has equal value and that we can fight and must fight for justice, both here at home and also around the world. And we know that by you working together with Senator Shelby and with Speaker Pelosi and with other leaders, that we can ensure that we have supplemental spending bills that will invest in our humanitarian leadership, that will save lives, but also that are vital to our economic and national and health security. So thank you all for being pillars of civic leadership at a time when it's desperately needed. And you, I think, most beautifully introduced Admiral Mike Mullen, which was, you perfectly, I think, embodied his virtue. And we're so grateful to have him, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, along with Michelle Flournoy, two of our most respected national security leaders in the country, I think, to speak about this important moment and how both it is the right thing to do and also the smart thing to do for us to invest in our humanitarian leadership. So a special thanks to Admiral Mike Mullen and also Michelle Flournoy, and we're so glad that you all will have the opportunity to have a discussion and to bring some of these issues to life and to light.
Great, thank you so much, Michelle. And it's wonderful to have Admiral Mullen back with us. You may recall we had a conversation at the 2017 CARE National Conference. It seems like a century ago, given all that's happened in the world, but so pleased to have Mike Mullen back with us. And I wanted to kick it off, Admiral. You wrote a very thoughtful and important piece last week in The Atlantic on some of the worrisome and challenging events of the last week here in this country. So I wondered if you could just start us off with your thoughts on how we should think about national security in this, current moment that we're in as a nation.
Thanks, Michelle. And I mean, first of all, I'd like to say thanks to CARE, Michelle Nunn, for your leadership and all you do. I mean, I've said this before, the more you do, the better you do, the less the military has to do around the world. And it really does make a difference in people's lives. So I'm very appreciative of that. And to Madam Speaker, congratulations. And Ambassador, the same thing. I mean, both well-deserved. Ambassador, particularly, you live in a very challenging part of the world, and your signal and your leadership in this is absolutely critical for the future, not just of the region, but also the world. To Chairman Shelby and Senator Leahy, I'm delighted to see you here because you have the money. So we can talk a lot, but if you don't put money behind this, it's not going anywhere. So I'm delighted to know of your support, long-standing support, but year after year to really make a difference. And to Michelle Flournoy, who's a colleague of mine and a good friend, I'm grateful to see you as well. Senator Leahy said it was a tough week. I think everybody recognizes that. To me, it really was an inflection point. And it was an inflection point because of the very broad-based protests that were out there to support the change that we've got to have with respect to inequality specifically and racial injustice, et cetera, on top of what is evident in this pandemic of other inequalities, whether it's health or healthcare or income or whatever the case might be. It's highlighted many of the things we've known about for a long time. So highlighting that issue of racial inequality and injustice, it's in that regard, it is a very unique moment. It's also a unique moment in terms of the tension that is there across the board. And then specifically for me to see to hear that the President of the United States might take the United States military and turn the military on its own people. That was kind of what tipped me over, if you will, in particular. And I come from a time, and many of you have been around as well, but I come from a time when I was a midshipman down here in Annapolis in 1968. Bobby Kennedy got killed in April. I'm sorry, Martin Luther King got killed in April. And I can still remember Bobby Kennedy's speech in Indianapolis, trying to bring us together after that and not let us fly apart. And then Bobby himself was assassinated the day I graduated. And at the time, I'm dating a young woman who was eventually become my wife. Washington, D.C. was locked down with tanks and the National Guard and on fire, and I couldn't even get in to see her. So those are very real moments for me, even as I speak today. And all of that just sort of got me to this point to speak out. Uncoordinated, despite some commentary that we all coordinated this. I had no idea that the article would open up the door, if you will, and for all the others. And it's a very tough issue because I've talked for a long time about admirals and generals, retired though they might be, not speaking out against political leaders. But I worried a great deal about our military getting politicized. So it's the same reason, actually. We cannot politicize our military, and we have to address these issues. And to have a unit of the 82nd Airborne standing by, not very far away, was a very strong message of intent as far as I was concerned. And it was essentially focusing on the American people as if they were our enemy. And that just is what made it very, very unique. I hope we learn from this and that we can actually move forward to address in a sustained way the problems that are clear right in front of us at this particular point in time.
Great. Thank you so much. Before I ask the last question, I just wanted to recognize that with us today, we have two highly respected U.S. defense leaders, both Senator Sam Nunn, and most importantly, father to the wonderful Michelle Nunn, and Senator John Warner, Democrat and Republican, who together led the Senate Armed Services Committee for many, many years. Senators, we just wanted to acknowledge your presence and thank you so much for your leadership and your support for CARE over the years. Admiral Mullen, in the interest of time, I'm going to combine my last two questions into one. You've talked before about the importance of U.S. engagement and leadership in the world. Sure. You've spoken about your concern about reputational damage that the U.S. has been suffered over the last several years. What kind of leadership would you like to see from the U.S. going forward, particularly in the area of humanitarian assistance and development?
Well, our friends, at least that I talk to overseas, our friends wonder who we are and where we're going, and will we be there for them after having been there for them for some, almost 80 years now, when you go back to the beginning of World War II, and leading. And we've chosen at this time to not lead anymore. And so they are, I think, trying to take care of themselves and wondering who we're going to be. I got a note from a friend that said, that actually a Brit who said that, that bright shining light that's sitting on the hill, it's dimming, and we hope you can turn it around. And so our ability actually to even carry out the humanitarian missions, I think as we recede from the international scene, carrying out the humanitarian missions are going to be that much more difficult, whether it's people or resources, people who are able to do this. So I think we're in a place right now where we jeopardize some 70 plus years of who we are and where we've been, and virtually destroying that as we isolate ourselves. And I'm also someone who's believed for a long time, the more we isolate, the more something really bad's going to happen that we're going to have to get involved in. So I would argue we have to re-engage, we have to reassure, and as I hope I made the point earlier, we need to lead with the humanitarian assistance. We need to lead with development. We need to lead with really the theme of what CARE is about America is America does care. And I think leading with that, we'd be able to reestablish our position. But I do worry that we don't really understand how much our position in the world in terms of its overall standing has changed in such a very short period of time.
Admiral, thank you so much. I just particularly want to thank you for the steadfast support you've shown for CARE over the years. You've been an incredible partner to this organization. I want to thank you for your service, continued service to the country, and really, especially in these recent days, for your moral leadership and for lifting your voice. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Michelle.
Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you both. That was an extraordinary conversation and a look back and a look at this moment that I think gives it historic resonance and reminds us what the foundation upon which we stand and the leadership that America has exhibited for so long, and this inflection point, which I do think this is being called into question, as you so well articulated, Admiral Mullen. So thank you, and I hope that your moral call will be answered by our congressional leadership and by our constituency as well. So we do have the chance now to think historically and to think contextually around presidential leadership and American leadership. And as we thought about 75 years of CARE, we recognized that literally all of the presidents have been involved in some sense in CARE. And for the last 75 years, we've seen presidential leadership that has embodied the idea of America as a city on the hill in this world. And so we're very lucky to have the families of our presidents, Neil Bush, Jason Carter, Lyndon Johnson Robb, Lucinda Robb, and Susan Eisenhower. And each of you has seen US leadership and presidential leadership very close. And you've also gone on to take leadership roles in your own lives, and I think to carry out the mantle of service in really powerful ways. So we're awfully lucky to have you, and grateful for your support. So I think Jada's going to start us off with the first question.
Susan, oh, am I muted?
Nope, you are on.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, my computer told me I was muted. Susan, I wonder if we could ask you to talk about the leadership of your grandfather, President Eisenhower. You've written a book, How Ike Led, which is coming out in August. Can you tell us a bit more?
Thank you very much, Michelle, for this great opportunity to be with you today. Congratulations to Madam Speaker and to Mr. Ambassador, to Michelle Flournoy and Mike Mullen for great presentations. It's an honor to be here. You know, I'm thrilled because I remember about CARE packages when I was a kid. My grandparents talked a lot about the suffering in Europe, and they talked often about the fact that young people really didn't have the kind of food that we enjoyed. And that was even in the beginning of the 1950s. And so this was a problem that went on for a very, very long period of time indeed. As a matter of fact, when we started supporting CARE ourselves, as a kid, I always felt like I was really doing something for other kids abroad. And so it was not only a lifeline for the kids in Europe, but it also made me feel like I was offering some public service as well. Of course, we know that CARE expanded far beyond its origins just after the war. As a matter of fact, many people don't realize that the first CARE packages were actually surplus military food. And Dwight Eisenhower was a great supporter of that. As a matter of fact, in 1946, when these first CARE packages made their big impact in Europe, he was Chief of Staff of the Army and extraordinarily supportive. I don't think, and it wasn't until I wrote this book that I really focused on the extraordinary level of destruction that war caused. The millions and millions, there were 10 million Germans themselves that were displaced and homeless, and CARE packages went to them as well, which was an extraordinary symbol, I think, of America's generosity and compassion. And this is something that has always filled Americans with pride, and it continues to do so through this organization. Let me just say that it was also the CARE program, and all it represented was equally important during the Cold War. Even though the ravages of the war were beginning to abate and the economies of Europe got better, there was still so much suffering in the world, as many emerging nations came out of their colonial past. And so it was interesting, and I think, let me just close with this idea, that Ike fought hard in his two-term presidency to make sure that foreign aid was a critical element of our national security. And there were plenty of people who thought we ought to only concentrate on the United States, but he wasn't having any of that because he understood the power that came from compassionate people showing themselves to be good global leaders and good global neighbors. Anyway, he said that it is essential in the geopolitical struggle that the world knows something about our good intentions, latent strengths, and respect for the rights of others. We must do that by convincing the whole world that our announced intentions of peace are the truth. And so in 1959, just at the end of his presidency, he took 3 round-the-world trips. He went through Europe, the Middle East. He went through Afghanistan and Pakistan. And then he took a Latin American trip that was almost as arduous as that one. And then he went to Asia. And everywhere he went, the face of America, the friendly face of America, had preceded him. As a matter of fact, he went not as a conqueror, but he went as a visiting neighbor. And so CARE continues to serve that role today, and it's been an enormous honor for me to be part of this great event. Thank you very much.
Susan, thanks. That's wonderful, and such a reminder of really the extraordinary nature of, for instance, America's outreach to Germany after the war, our former enemies, and then also your own grandfather's leadership and recognition of the face of the world in which he helped to embody, but through America's generosity and solidarity with the world. So thank you for that. So great inspiration, and not an easy thing to do either. I mean, took political courage. So thank you. We also have with us Linda and Lucinda from the Johnson family. We're so grateful. You all have been wonderful supporters of CARE, and you have also an extraordinary legacy within your family, and one that it clearly was focused on economic justice and fighting poverty and humanitarian leadership. So we'd love to hear your reflections about that legacy.
Michelle, I'm so pleased to be here with a bipartisan group of presidential children and grandchildren. My father worked very hard, as you know, Susan, with yours, and supported him against some of his own party. But I think that's what we're talking about, that we all need together to try to rally around to help people, which is what CARE does. It reaches out and brings us all closer together in our hearts. And like Senator Shelby, I also packed those brown boxes when I was in elementary school in Washington, D.C. I remember putting things in, and I was thinking, what do you mean? These people need toothbrushes? I mean, it just was, I had no idea about how severe the crisis was with children abroad, as well as, of course, grown-ups. And then my father and mother went to a CARE preschool group in, it was CARE and USAID, and their mother is holding the glass and daddy's pouring and vice versa. I'd have to say that I'm very proud of my grandmother and my mother and what she did also to look out for people around the world. And I think the world of CARE, and I have tried to support you. And I'm pleased to be here with so many other children whose relatives who have reached out across party lines and across lines in the world to try to serve everybody. And I'm delighted to have my own daughter here, Lucinda, who can say something about my mother, who was equal in many ways and maybe a little better than my father.
Well, growing up, one of the things I always remember my grandmother saying was that you have to pay the rent for the space you take up on the planet. And this was something that she not only said she really believed, and she, all of her life, she was very active in supporting a lot of causes that she cared about. And she was supported them not just with her time, but very visibly with her money. And I think that's important for us to remember, because as anybody on this call or listening has children knows that children may not always do what you say, but they watch what you do. And I think that it's also important for us to remember that we never know when we're going to be the ones who need the help. I was reading an interesting story the other day that really brought that back to me. In 1831, the Choctaw Nation was in Oklahoma. They'd been resettled after the Trail of Tears, so they were in themselves in dire situation, but they were reading about the poverty in Ireland caused by the potato famine. And they managed to scrounge up a little bit of some of the very small amount of funds that they have to send them over to Ireland to try to do something about that suffering. Well, 171 years later, the people of Ireland got together, and over 24,000 donors raised almost $1 million that then went back to the reservations for the Hopi and the Navajo, who are suffering so much under COVID, to try to do something for them in return. And it was just another reminder to me that caring for others is good for all of us.
Lucinda, thank you. Those are both beautiful testimonials and bearing witness to human solidarity and to the power of powerful women who were extraordinary and who upon whose shoulders we stand. Thank you both for that. I am really pleased that I get to also welcome Jason Carter, a wonderful friend from an extraordinary family. He's the chairman of the Carter Center, among many other things. He served in the Peace Corps, as did his grandmother. And so a real heritage of health and human rights leadership. So we'd love to hear some of those lessons, Jason.
Thanks, Michelle. It's good to talk to you. It's good to see everyone. I apologize for my coronavirus beard, but it's a great honor to be here. And as Michelle mentioned, my great-grandmother served in the Peace Corps. And just to touch on that strong woman for a minute, first of all, she turned 70 in the Peace Corps, which means it's not too late for anyone out there. But number two, her experience, she was in many ways, as folks sometimes forget about my grandparents, they came from a tiny village in South Georgia that's not near anything, and there's no reason for anyone to go there, and in many ways was a marginalized place. And there's a picture of her there, was literally a little old lady from South Georgia, and she chose to join the Peace Corps, and the experience that she had in India, just connecting with people, that experience really, I think, infected the rest of my entire family. And when my grandfather was, as he would say, involuntarily retired from the White House, she was standing there saying, I turned 70 in the Peace Corps, what are you going to do? And that idea and that message and that belief that people across the world matter to each of us in our own lives, that no matter where they live or how they grew up or what environment they come from, what race, what religion, the way that they live their lives is so similar and so connected to ours. That idea has been powerful and I think has driven my family, and I think it drives CARE. As you know, Michelle, the Carter Center and CARE bump into each other in the field from time to time at the farthest and most sort of in the road places that exist. And what we find there is that same idea that in a tiny village, whether it's in South Georgia or whether it's in Mali or Bangladesh, it is a place where people have power, where people deserve dignity. And I think at this moment in history, as we are confronted with a virtual meeting because of a coronavirus, we now know more than ever that if someone gets sick halfway across the world, it might matter to us in our lives. That if justice is denied to somebody in a faraway city or in a faraway community, or for people who don't look like us, that injustice still matters in our lives. And that message that we're connected fundamentally is the one that I think has driven my family, that has driven CARE. And it's one that we all hope and believe is what makes us Americans and can drive us into the future. And so I'm honored to be here. I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate CARE's leadership. And I appreciate the other folks on this call who believe in that same fundamental human connection that I think drives all of this work. So thank you very much for having me, and it's a great honor to be here.
Thanks, Jason, and to you and your family. And it's wonderful to be reminded of your great-grandmother's extraordinary legacy and imprint on the world, really, and also to give us all hope that we can still go into the Peace Corps in our senior years. I have always aspired to that, so thank you. And so finally, we have the opportunity to hear from Neil Bush, one of my favorite people, and one of my partners when I worked at Points of Light. He's been the chairman of Points of Light, one of the true ambassadors for service, and also for bipartisan leadership. So Neil, you get the final reflection here.
Well, first of all, Michelle, thank you. I imagine I'm your favorite Bush, which wouldn't surprise anybody. You're my favorite nun, although I love your family. I want to congratulate Speaker Pelosi. It's nice to see you again. She has attended many of our Points of Light events and supported the Bush family efforts in so many different ways. Ambassador Michelle Altani, thank you for your support for humanitarian causes all over the world. Qatar is a real leader and shines a bright light, sets a high bar for other countries in this kind of work. Chairman Shelby and Senator Leahy and Admiral Mullen, Michelle Forney, my dad always thought that service was a noble calling, and that you guys are serving so ably and with such integrity is something that he would be extremely proud of and would want me to thank you for your service. Michelle, you are a great leader at Points of Light. Points of Light was formed by my father when he was in the White House. He called on all of America and all of the people around the world to be a point of light in the lives of others. He said that any definition of a successful life must include service to others. And so with the extraordinary times that we're facing today, with the health and the economic and the civil unrest challenges that we're facing in America, there's never been a moment more in need of finding the light that resides in all of us to be a positive influence in the lives of others. And the truth is that service is a powerful force for bringing us together. It has been historically. When the tsunami hit in 2005, my brother asked President Clinton and my father to participate together in tsunami relief work. It was more than just the optics. These two gentlemen became good friends. They crossed party lines to help make the world a better place. In 2003, prior to that, my brother asked Speaker Pelosi and Democrats and Republicans to unify around PEPFAR, which spent $80 billion over the years and saved millions and millions of lives. And so the work that is done through service is something that brings us together. And I love what Admiral Mullen said, that we can prevent wars by leaning in, with care. And I am 100% convinced that what makes America great is our goodness. And so I hope that humans, that Americans and the people all over the globe find our common humanity, that we lock arms and that we address our common challenges, whether it's in health or economic concerns, lifting people out of poverty, helping people that are in refugee camps, doing the great work that CARE is doing every single day to lift millions of people. But being a point of light in the lives of others is just one of the great callings we have as humans. So Michelle, thank you for the great work you do. It's been an honor to be part of this webinar, and keep going. 75 more years to do great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil, for reminding us to be a point of light in the world and to continue on that mission. Michelle is getting mic'd up for the virtual summit that's coming at the top of the hour. So please let me convey our heartfelt thanks to all the members of the presidential families, our honorees, Speaker Pelosi, Senator Shelby, Senator Leahy, Ambassador Altani of Qatar, and our sponsors. Your support literally makes it possible for CARE to save lives and empower women and girls to lift their communities out of poverty. And at the launch of CARE's 75th anniversary, as we address a global pandemic and the need for social and economic justice worldwide, your generosity is more critical every day. The virtual summit, which replaces the annual CARE National Conference this year, starts next. So I hope you will join us on Facebook Live for that event. Just go to www.facebook.com/carefans/live/. We hope you join us there. Thank you.